I'm not surprised that you would be convening this town hall. It's such an important need. You've got incredible superintendents in your area. I don't always get a chance to speak to them directly, but I'm glad to be on with them. Obviously, I get to talk a lot with your county superintendent, Ted Alejandre, who is just a champion for all of the school districts in your county. And you all have fabulous leadership, and you're assembly person. I'm not telling you anything that you don't know. She's made early education more than a passion. She's made it her commitment, and it's great to partner with her. Now, obviously, we find ourselves talking about different issues. Yes, early education is important, but it's hard to imagine our young children having to sit in front of a computer as their main way of learning. But given where things are with this pandemic, that is the most safe way for most of our school districts at this time. You all know, as we are gathered now, more than 97% of our school districts throughout the state are opening in distance learning. The high rate of infection of COVID cases is so significant that we find ourselves doing that, even though we know that the best thing for our students is in-person instruction, where they can see their teachers, where they can see one-to-one aides, where we can focus on services to students with special needs and English learners and free and reduced lunch students and all of our students. But until we find ourselves to safer times, we must do what I call the 3 priorities. 1, keep our students safe, and that's what distance learning affords us. 2, continue to focus on the social emotional learning needs of our students. And I'll talk about a counseling coalition that we've created to make sure that students anywhere in the state can get support. And 3, continue to focus on learning. While we know that these are not ideal circumstances, our students continue to learn, and we can offset learning gaps that our students might experience by doing a number of things. Happy to tell you about our work to close the digital divide. I've named a task force that's focused on that. The legislature, thank you, Assemblymember Reyes and others, has given $5.3 billion to our school districts to make sure that they can have money for computing devices, training for professional development, social emotional needs. Our office has been working to help get those devices out. I know that almost 6,000 devices we've helped to get donated to different school districts in San Bernardino County. And we're happy to give you the list. You know, we want to make sure that we are supporting this district. This county is very important in education and in many other ways. It represents one of the largest. Superintendent Alejandre always tells me about the growth and the demographics. It is one of the largest and one of the most diverse and one of the most important in our state. And we want to lean in and do all the things that we can help to make it safer for everyone until we can open again. I'm happy, Assembly Member, to answer any questions that you have tonight about all the waivers that are being put out by the Department of Public Health, what schools can open and what can't. You know, we're going to keep working until we get more devices. Just 3 weeks ago, we made a partnership with Apple and T-Mobile to say that we will get discounted computing devices to students who need them, and the districts have the money to pay for them thanks to your work and the work of the governor. And so we're happy to talk about any of the things that are happening in our state. And we didn't want to let the pandemic stop us from addressing issues of racial justice as well. We've been very busy since the killing of George Floyd, talking about the impacts of race and racism on our communities, on African-American communities, on Latino communities, on immigrant communities, on all communities. And we've launched a series on ethnic studies where students get to see people who look like them, Latinos, Native Americans, African Americans, Asian and Pacific Islanders, so they learn history that's so important to them. And so we can't wait to tell you about that. We can't wait to tell you about our effort to bring more implicit bias training to our schools to make sure that we have courageous conversations about dealing with race and racism. We know that this is a difficult time for our families, but we're saying let's all lean in for our 6 million students to make sure that they get lunches when they need them, that our students with disabilities get support, that our teachers have the resources they need to do quality distance learning, because we want to make sure we serve all of our students. And I'll talk to you about it later, Assembly Member. We're rolling out a whole new program on family engagement, because we know that our districts have to be able to pick up the phone when parents without computers call. We can't tell families just to email. If they don't have a computer, someone's got to be on the other end of that phone and to take their call when they say, what do? I don't know how to do this schoolwork, or this distance learning is too hard, or my child needs counseling. And so it's an honor to be with you. It's an honor to spend so much time in San Bernardino County. I find myself almost like a part-time resident. We have a school just outside San Bernardino County to serve deaf children. I get to spend a lot of time both there and with family in San Bernardino County, and I'm honored to be on your town hall this evening, Assembly Member. Thank you for your leadership, and happy to answer questions at any time.
Oh, thank you so much. What an honor to have you here with us. I know that when you were running for state superintendent, the one thing I said, I hated to lose you as a colleague in the assembly. And I said, I just want you to promise me that you're going to not forget the Inland Empire, that you're going to come see us. And you've been a man of your word. You have really taken care of the Inland Empire, and I want to thank you. I want to thank you so much for that.
Assembly Member, I forgot to mention, we have two locations in the Inland Empire. In addition to our school, we also have an office that focuses on food distribution for all of our school districts in Southern California, again, right here in San Bernardino County. And so we are grateful to be of service to you and to be in your county, in your assembly district.
I love it. I love it. Well, because the topic of education isn't just a state issue, we did ask, as you mentioned, as we mentioned earlier, we did ask our local superintendents to join us to welcome you also. And they're going to offer some specific information, but our schools in San Bernardino, Muscoy, Rialto, Fontana, Colton, Bloomington, and Grand Terrace are all represented. So during the discussion, we're going to hear from San Bernardino County Superintendent Ted Alejandre, San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools. My goodness. Ted began his first 4-year term as the county's 34th superintendent on January 5th, 2015, with more than 30 years of experience in public education. Mr. Alejandre has been a teacher, vice principal, a principal, and director of fiscal services at the district level, and has served as the assistant superintendent of business services. Also joining us from the Rialto Unified School District is Superintendent Dr. Cuauhtemoc Avila. Dr. Avila is the first Mexican-American and the youngest Latino school chief ever hired by the Rialto Unified School District. Dr. Avila was unanimously appointed as superintendent of the Rialto Unified School District in 2015 after being a leader in public education for more than 22 years. Our next panelist is going to be Fontana Unified School District Superintendent Randal Bassett. Randal has 22 years of management experience in education, including 20 years with the Fontana Unified School District. He has served the district in several capacities, including the executive leadership positions of Associate Superintendent of Business Services and Chief Technology Officer. Our final panelist is from, of course, my hometown, from the Colton Joint Unified School District, Superintendent Dr. Frank Miranda. Dr. Miranda joined Colton Joint Unified School District in 2008 as the principal of McKinley Elementary School. He then subsequently served as Director of Human Resources and later as Director of Fiscal Services before being promoted to Assistant Superintendent. Earlier in his career, he was an elementary and middle school principal in San Bernardino and a math and science teacher in Pomona. I want to welcome all of my superintendents. I'm so proud that all of you are with me to welcome our state superintendent. Now, before we get started with the questions, because I know Superintendent Thurmond, I know you're ready to answer the questions, as are our other superintendents. During the call, all participants, all our community members who've joined us will be muted. Our team has already collected a number of questions during the past few days from the community to ask our panelists. We're going to try to get to as many of those questions as we possibly can. If at any time you think of a question, please write it down, email it to my office, or place it in the chat section of this Zoom call. We'll try to gather those questions and make sure we get an answer for you in the next few days. My Zoom is also being broadcasted in Spanish, so please look at the chat for the call-in information. Este Zoom también está siendo transmitido en español. Mire en el chat para obtener información sobre traducción. Now, since coming to Sacramento, the education of our children has been of the utmost importance to me. The legislation introduced and voted on by myself is a reflection of this. I'm proud to stand with our education leaders from the state, from the county, and from our cities to bring the most up-to-date information regarding our children's education. So, okay, I say let's get started on the questions. I want to make sure Tony gets to answer all the questions because I've got to tell you, Superintendent Thurmond, we got so many questions. The interest was so great when they knew that we would have a town hall with you and with our superintendents. So we've already welcomed you, and I want to thank you again for being with us. Thank you for keeping the Inland Empire close to you and for being available to our local superintendents as they navigate their respective schools in the middle of this COVID pandemic. The primary concern for our parents is the education of our children. We all agree with that. Everything has changed though with COVID-19, and our children were sent home to navigate their education via the internet. With this unexpected change, our teachers were sent scrambling to figure out how to continue teaching their students. Our students had to learn a new way of learning, and our high school graduates had to graduate virtually. And then our parents, now our parents have to be teacher's aide, tutor, IT person, and still be a parent. Collectively, we're concerned about some losses in the education of our children, but we also all understand these are extraordinary times and our children need to be protected and kept away from school buildings. What a whirlwind, no question about it. And now we begin with a new school year, virtually over the internet. So the first question from the community is, what did we learn about what we did right? Because we started this in the spring, we finished that school year, now we're starting a new school year. So what did we learn about what we did right? What did we do wrong? And how did we make it better to start this new school year?
Assembly member, as I answer that question, I'd like to start by really commending the students, the families, the teachers and administrators and classified staff in San Bernardino County for their incredible work. As you pointed out, all of California and really all the schools in our nation went into distance learning overnight with no playbook for how to do that, but with the top priority of keeping everybody safe. And so A+ on keeping everyone safe. Obviously, moving into distance learning, we weren't prepared. It uncovered that we have a major digital divide. Many folks didn't have devices. Students sometimes and their families couldn't get the information, if they were using paper packets. Things were bumpy for a number of our families, and it showed that many of the learning gaps that we were working already to close were exacerbated by the pandemic. Now, great things, we provided meals at 5,000 sites across our state because we know that many families are struggling for basic needs and that school is an important place and is a hub for important resources. But we know that many students weren't able to check in because they might have been scrambling just because of relocation. Maybe a family member lost a job, and the resources provided by the legislature and by the federal government, the CARES Act, has really allowed us to provide ongoing support to our schools and our 6 million students. As we shift to go into distance learning again, we know that we have to really lean in, and that's why I talked about the family engagement. We know that many of our families who have served in special education struggled. They didn't always receive many of the services that they should. I can tell you I've met many educators who serve right here in San Bernardino County, special educators who do great work. And they conducted their IEPs on Zoom. They stayed and connected with families if they had to, just by phone. There is still a possible way to make sure that our families are served well. Family engagement is very important to that. It's very important for our English learners, for our families on free and reduced lunch, for our African-American families, for Latinos, and many, many others. We've got to lean in. And so you'll hear us talk a lot, Assembly Member, about family engagement as we go into this next round of distance learning. The other thing we'll talk a lot about is just making sure there's balance around how the distance learning happens. Students need to see their teachers on the Zoom. They need to see their one-on-one aid. All of this is part of supporting the social emotional learning needs of our students. And our office is working with school districts. We've worked closely with Superintendent Alejandre on a number of things, including how we help to provide more guidance on best practices in distance learning. We know that in-person instruction is the best for our families, but if we have to use distance learning, we cannot allow that to be a reason for why our students don't get access to great learning. Obviously, this is not the same as when students are in their classroom and they're directly in the same room with their educators, but we can still ensure that our students have quality and good learning, and so we place a great deal of focus on distance learning. Needless to say, we're placing a great deal of emphasis on getting the devices that students need. And for anyone who's still looking, contact us at digitaldivide@cde.ca.gov. That's the email that we use to help districts stay connected with the companies that still have discounted computing devices. And so we're happy to help, Assembly Member. We want the distance learning experience to be a safer one. We're hoping that it's a short period and that we're able to go back into in-person instruction. But until we can, we want to lean in all the way to make sure that distance learning is better this next time around.
I really appreciate that. I know that so much work has been put into this, and I honestly, I really appreciate all that effort. So why don't we ask our State Superintendent, Ted Alejandre, I want to ask you, how are you implementing these changes to accommodate our students, our teachers, our parents, to make sure that they have the best educational opportunities for our children, for our students?
Absolutely be happy to address that. And thank you, Assemblymember Reyes, for hosting this important event. This information is so important for our community. And I just really want to thank and commend our State Superintendent, Tony Thurmond. He's been phenomenal. He's so committed and passionate to our students. Just yesterday, he had his entire team of leaders at CD address all the 58 county superintendents to respond to these emerging and high priority issues so that we can all be connected to the resources to support our school districts. And in our county, we have 33 school districts, 400,000 students, and we have tremendous superintendents on this panel. Just appreciate to be part of the collegial work that we all do to support students. But as you know, when we went into this first effort back in March, we thought it was going to be a couple weeks and a couple months, and it went the entire year. And then we were planning for hybrid models of returning students back physically, but with the virus increasing in our state, particularly in our county, then we had to commit to keeping this, obviously keeping the safety of staff and students as the highest priority. And because of that, we're focused on distance learning efforts. And the superintendent outlined a lot of key areas. I just want to highlight a couple in that, in having students have the connectivity and the devices to access online learning platforms. What's key to effective delivery is really the professional development for teachers. And what we did right away is start a collaborative in San Bernardino County through our digital learning team that hosted PD for all teachers throughout the county. We had hundreds on every session. We continue to do those sessions now. And with the support of our superintendents and their content leads, we've been able really to address how to be engaging with students in online environments. And that's been tremendously helpful to really make learning powerful. But the superintendent mentioned there's other ways. You have to make phone calls. Our special ed teachers, you know, I'll give you an example of a fourth grade teacher who has kids every year, 34 kids one year, 34 kids next year. In the special ed programs we serve, the teachers will serve that same special ed student for 4, 5, 6 years in many cases. So they really get bonded with the families, and daily phone calls are part of their everyday occurrence because they want to stay connected to the families and providing support to fragile students in special ed programs. And then I have to say, I really want to commend our partnership with San Bernardino Community College District, Jose Torres, Frank Reyes, board member, and the rest of the board members for the San Bernardino Community College. Because of their efforts, we had a partnership with KVCR for both our county and Riverside, to where the K-12 programming was committed every single day that was aligned with content lessons by content experts that included project-based learning and other ways to extend learning. And because it's telecast, then you don't need connectivity. You can get it through KVCR, which is available to many of our families, particularly in your area, Assemblywoman. So that's been a tremendous partnership. And because of that, we've been a model. The state superintendents invited us to help lead the state collaborative on how to effectively use distance learning to support students. So those are just some of the examples. I know my colleagues have others, but those are some of the key that I wanted to emphasize.
Thank you so much. And I'm glad you mentioned KVCR. I know I'm up in Sacramento. Frank is back home, but he's joining us on the call. So shout out to San Bernardino County, San Bernardino Community College District Trustee Frank Reyes, my favorite of the trustees. Thank you for mentioning KVCR. All right, Superintendent Thurmond, here's another question from the community. It says there is discussion at our school districts around seeking waivers to allow for in-person student instruction for elementary schools. Can you expand on what this means, and will this include middle schools and high schools?
Thank you, Assembly Member, and thank you, Superintendent Alejandre. You can see why I asked him to serve on a statewide council of superintendents to really advise me in the State Department of Education. He's really a man of detail and really committed to students. I hear all the time when we were before the pandemic, people would say to me, you know, nobody leans in like Superintendent Alejandre. Like, school districts would need buses to help students get to events. He'd dig into his organizational budget to find out ways to make these things happen. And so he's really a special superintendent. You know, I'm grateful, Superintendent Avila, we had a chance to be at his district and provide him an award. You actually have an award winner on, you know, green schools and things that have happened in the community. And so we're grateful.
I was there.
We were there together. You were the MC.
right.
And so, many of your districts can probably give this presentation better. Your superintendents can give this better than I can. But the reality is that there is a waiver process right now for grades from kindergarten through sixth grade right now to be able to have a waiver, even if the county remains on the monitoring list because of a high number of cases of COVID rate of infection. School districts can get a waiver for grades K-6. What's anticipated is that the California Department of Public Health will be announcing within days another waiver that will make it known how a school district can have small numbers of children on campus. Might be children who have special needs, could be children in childcare pods, but we're all waiting to get that guidance. And as soon as we have it, I'm sure that the superintendents here and Superintendent Alejandro and I will be happy to share that. But we are all expecting to get more guidance in the next few days that explains how districts can maintain small pods, small numbers of children on campus. This is very important. It's so important to maintain physical distance. Everyone said, I always say there's a lot about the pandemic that we don't know, but we can control how we respond to the pandemic. And it is amazing what a difference wearing a face mask will make in every environment for children and adults. Physical distancing and washing hands, I just can't say it enough that we can continue to flatten the curve, and we have to do this in every one of our 58 counties in the state. And so this new guidance will be out any day, Assemblymember Reyes, that will talk about how small groups of students may be able to be back on campus from K through 12.
That's really good news. So it's K through 12 then?
Currently, there is a waiver process for how campuses can be open for small numbers of students from K through 6, even if they're on the monitoring list. Right now, that process involves conversations with the district superintendent, our county superintendent, and the county public health officer. They really are the keys to that process. The State Department of Public Health stays involved in an advisory way, but ultimately local decision-making is driving these things. And so, but what we're expecting is for that guidance to be amended to include ways that school districts may be able to expand on grade levels where there can be students on campus in very, very small numbers.
Very good. Well, thank you for that. And so I do want to ask Superintendent Alejandro, have any of our local schools requested a waiver? That's one of the questions.
Yes, and that was a great overview by the superintendent because, and one of the things that's important is a relationship with public health and the county superintendent's office and all of our district superintendents. And we have regular meetings with our district superintendents, and we've invited Corwin, who is our public health director, as well as Dr. Gustafson, who's our public health officer, to those meetings. And she's kept us all abreast on that waiver process. We did have one district that was one of the first in the state that took advantage of the waiver process, worked with their teachers and their staff and their board, and submitted a waiver and was approved. And they will be having students physically in their district as of the 20th, which is 2 days from now. But you have to have less than 200 per 100,000 community transmission rates, and they're far below that because we're in a remote part of the desert, which gives them that opportunity to really pursue that. So they did apply, and they were successful, and those students will be coming back. But again, that partnership is so important. We have other districts that are considering it. It's really a collaborative effort with the trustees of the district as well as their association leads for the teachers and the classified staff, so there can be a team effort in moving forward and pursuing that waiver request.
Wonderful. So it's not an easy process, but there is a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
It's good for our schools to know. Superintendent Thurmond, the issue of inequality in education has been important to all of you, to you especially, even before the pandemic. Is there a special advisory group that is being formed at the state level to address this issue? And how can the communities communicate with them? If there is someone in particular that the community can reach out to, I'll ask Esmeralda to put the information in the chat line.
Sure. First of all, Assembly member, if anyone in the town hall tonight has concerns about special education, for example, they can send an email to sedinfo@cde.ca.gov. If Esmeralda wouldn't mind, sedinfo at cde.ca.gov. There are a number of committees that focus on special education, but we're going to figure out ways to do more. We want to do more family engagement. We understand that there have been challenges. I can see even from reading the chat, not everybody is able to connect in the ways that they need to. And so we want to create opportunities to hear from our families so that we can work with our districts on ways that we can be as supportive as we can. This is tough work. We're all trying to figure it out together. And so one of the things that we want to do is continue to hear parent voice, especially around special education. Assembly member, there are a couple of groups that we partnered with that all they do is organize parents. They've surveyed parents, and that's how we knew how bumpy the distance learning had been. One of the groups is called PK. A lot of folks know about PK. They do organizing. They do great organizing work across the state. They do incredible work. Californians Together, they've really worked with us on our work and how we support English learners. We've worked with a group called Ed Trust West. They put out a survey, and the survey showed results that showed that there were negative impacts for students who are African American, who are English learners, who are free and reduced lunch, and that by and large, their experience in distance learning for the most part was not what it could be. And so we're looking at their data to figure out ways to make improvements. We want to support those families. And we're leaning in again with family engagement programs, a family engagement emphasis to make sure our families have the support that they need.
Thank you so much. This equitable education or equity in education is extremely important. And I know when you were in the state assembly, that was something that you always fought for. So I'm glad that you're now in the position you're in so that you can actually implement all of the policies that need to be done. So Superintendent Cuauhtemoc Avila, specifically at the district level, are there other special advisory groups that you have put together in your district to address the issue of equity in education? And again, how can the community communicate with your group?
Thank you very much for asking the question. So the answer is yes, but first let me say that equity is everyone's responsibility, regardless of position or title. It's a moral imperative that requires everyone take part in it. So it's a two-step process for us because we don't believe that equity should be compartmentalized to one person or one small group of people, because that in and of itself generates more inequity. And so in Rialto, we are sort of guilty of that. But we're guilty because we needed to bring attention to inequity and then transition away from it. And what I mean by this is we do have a strategic plan that ensures every student experiences personal and career fulfillment. We have a position similar to a deputy superintendent. It is the lead strategic agent who is responsible for strategics, congruence, and social justice, which includes equity. His name is Dr. McDuffie. So the community can reach Dr. McDuffie if they have any questions or concerns regarding equity. We also have an equity council that reviews policy, data, and actions. And the equity council was able to produce an initial equity plan that focuses on students with special needs, English learners, African-American students. And the goal is to be equitable rather, without the need for an equity department, because again, we don't want to default to what we have seen with special education, English learners, is that the issue then becomes part of that department and others don't take the ownership or responsibility that they need in order to meet the needs of these kids, because they see that as a department or as an individual person's responsibility and not their own.
I really appreciate that. I hadn't thought of it that way, and you're right. We start to compartmentalize issues and students when it should be everybody's responsibility. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Well, here's another question from the community for Superintendent Thurmond. But I want to begin by saying how proud I am of your efforts to address the issue of computers and hotspots for our students. I really have been so proud of what you've done regarding that. So here's the question. It says, how are we addressing the digital divide? And is there any grace period to allow for students and families to address technological barriers? What resources are available to them for assistance?
Thanks, Assembly Member. It's such a tough issue. As you know, right now, there is a worldwide shortage of computing devices and hotspots. And so we're trying to work through that. And what we found is that we reached out to all the internet companies that we work with through our task force on closing the digital divide. We asked all of them to make available whatever devices you can get from your manufacturing partners, because kids can't wait till October and November and December to get computers. They need them like yesterday. We're playing catch up, and we're coming from behind to really catch up. And so we've used this task force to put pressure on device manufacturers, to be honest with you, and internet service providers to help us get devices. Now, most recently, we announced that Apple has a discounted iPad that they've made available to school districts to purchase that is already internet enabled. And so, and T-Mobile is providing the internet through most places in the state for $10 a month. And so if T-Mobile isn't in the areas, then all the other internet service providers also can offer the same internet connectivity for $10 a month using that same iPad. What I'm saying is we got Apple to prioritize California schools, to say that even though there's a shortage worldwide, California kids need to be in the front of the line for these devices. And they've said, hey, we're going to make a couple 100,000 devices available to California school districts. And so that's where we are right now. We're trying to connect districts to the manufacturers to get these devices for our students. Our districts are doing an incredible job. They're scrambling to get computing devices and hotspots. They've got orders. Sometimes they're back ordered. The problem is we can't expect students and families to wait 10 weeks or more until there's more Chromebooks. And so what we told Apple is, hey, this device has got to be able to work across all systems, because school districts use different systems. And this may not be the device that school districts are used to. The reality is with the supply limitations, it's a great one. And we hope that school districts will consider using their money to buy it for the families to use the discount. This is top of the line equipment that's been made available. The other thing, Assembly Member, we want your families to know, if any of the families are trying to get the reduced cost internet, I want them to know they don't ever again have to give their social security number or their financial credit history. When we use our task force, we just put a lot of pressure on the internet companies to say, don't do this anymore. If you're going to give reduced cost internet that's high speed, just provide it, but don't ask for a whole bunch of things that are barriers. And so if any of your families ever say that they're having a problem getting that internet, just tell them to use my name, drop my name, tell them the state superintendent said they better not ask you for your social security number. We even got the companies to agree to provide a liaison who will answer calls from families by phone in Spanish and English, so that families that are struggling to get access to the internet have a hotline that they can call. And so we want to remove barriers, and that's what we've done with our task force on closing the digital divide. And so your colleague, your Senator Leyva, has co-chaired that with me. A number of your colleagues have worked with us, but Assemblymember Reyes, it's been great working through your office to be able to get the devices that were donated to your school districts. So thank you for your leadership there. And I know that folks are asking in the chat, can the advocacy groups meet with me? I'm happy to meet with them, but if it's on you, we'd like to continue working through you, Assembly Member, because you know the community best, and we like to work with you. If groups contact you and say they're concerned or they're just upset with Tony Thurmond because something didn't happen, send me that text. Assembly Member Reyes will let me know right away, and we'll do what we can. We want to find ways to be helpful and resourceful and supportive to all of our families.
Thank you so much. I know that at the beginning of this pandemic, when we were sent home on a long recess, I took the time to call each of my superintendents to see how things were going, to find out how the state could help. And by the second phone call, every single one of the superintendents had already progressed to try to get the devices for their students. I was just so pleased because, as you said, there wasn't a handbook that said how you do distance learning. We were all thrown into it. So here's a question for Superintendent Bassett from Fontana. How has the district addressed the need for personal computers and internet access for our students in Fontana? And the question from me is, how can the state help you?
Thank you, Assemblymember Reyes. when we started out this process, and the state superintendent really hit the nail on the head, it's been a supply chain issue as well. We ordered computers back in February that we just received last week. So having access to the computers and being creative has been what we've really had to do. We've deployed since January, and we actually started this process in January. The Board of Education in Fontana decided that every student was going to have a device. We've deployed 36,000 computers to our students. So one for every student, TK all the way up through 12th grade. It's been a challenge, but it's a commitment that we want to have, that we've made. And we want to be, if you're talking about crossing and bridging that digital divide, we wanted to make sure that it was something that was a modern device as well. So we don't want to give something 7 years old that's going to be breaking down as you're trying to connect with your parent. So we've made that commitment. We've been successful in that. As we start up school next week, that is one of the key things that we've had to address. The other challenge with that, though, is also how do you actually make that connection between the teacher and the student? How do you bridge the internet, as you've mentioned? It's very much like right now, as far as we're going through power outages. And if you think about power outages at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they're generally between 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock. So when people go home, they throw something in the microwave, they flip on the air conditioning, and they look endlessly in the back of the refrigerator for that soda that they knew was there. But there's that sudden impact on the grid that's been created on the power side. But that's really what's happening right now with even the digital divide in internet connections. So on Monday morning about 9 o'clock, I know in Fontana that 36,000 students will be logging on to distance learning with high-speed video connections, but the grid has not been created at this point in time to be able to support that. So we know that there's going to be some challenges, and hotspots aren't always the fix for that. So what our Board of Education did is they took a little bit of a different approach. The FCC back in January approved the use of a new cellular technology. So they made the commitment to actually build a purpose-built network for cellular connectivity for every student within Fontana, that they would have high-speed connectivity, not just limited to 5 gigs or not just limited to 10 gigabytes of connection, but having high-speed connections that would offer them a modern network. So that's something that is going to take time to lay the fiber, to lay those types of things into place, and to really build that grid out so that we have that capacity. But for right now, we have bridged the divide as far as the devices. We are offering internet connectivity, at least a base level of that. But as far as the next level, and the state has been incredible as far as getting the funding for us. I was in contact with Superintendent Thurmond's office about the supply chain challenge, and the next day they were back and here's our connection with Apple computers. So it was something that was really outstanding in building that up. But I think the next step too is really binding together and coming together and looking at what resources can we put together to build something that is going to build the infrastructure for the next level. We believe that learning can take place any place, anytime, and virtually any pace. And we're hoping from what we have learned through this process, we could actually take that and keep that connection going and have our students building the future. So it's coming together as a state. It's going and getting E-rate funding through the FCC, and really making at the federal level people understand that connectivity is not just about building connectivity in the school buildings themselves. It really is about connecting our community and really evening out that connection. Because a student may learn at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. We don't always encourage that as parents, but I know that it is something that having that access continually is something that is really important. And so we want to have that connectivity there and not just have that digital divide from when our students leave our schools, that they won't have connectivity anymore. We want world-class connectivity, and we have to build that. Just a really short note, we looked at this a couple years ago in Fontana. We looked at our elementary schools in the core of Fontana. We found that 75% of our students, the only access that they had to the internet was through their parents' cell phone. So that's something that has to be fixed. It's something that we have to continue to grow on. And while we're making those connections with our teachers at this point in time, it's something as we build this out, as we build the infrastructure, we will be able to take our students to the next level and not just have connectivity limited to the Silicon Valley as far as cutting edge, it's also going to be in the Inland Empire. So that's what we're trying to do.
I love it. I know that you and Fontana you've been leaders in that. So thank you so much. All right, Superintendent Thurmond, here's another question from the community. Actually, we've received lots of calls from parents and students regarding IEPs. I know we've touched on this a little, but here's the question. While every student has had challenges during this pandemic school year, the challenges have been unbearable for many of our students with IEPs. We know that COVID-19 presents many hurdles for educators during this time. Who provides oversight and monitors districts to ensure that all services addressed in an IEP are being executed? And how will services differ now during COVID-19?
All great questions. And with all these superintendents on, I know that they can speak to your constituents. They may have local ways that parents can speak to the district if they have a concern about an IEP not being provided or some service not being provided. I like to always start by saying the law has not changed as it relates to the provision of special education. I understand we are in circumstances that are different than has ever been envisioned. And I'm certain that the law and our experience, no one ever expected that we'd be asked to deliver an IEP over Zoom. But that is still the expectation, that we allow the IEP to be the guide of each of our students' needs as it relates to serving students in special education. And so I believe that we have to continue to lean in to make sure that we deliver the IEP, that we do good work with our families. There are all kinds of questions about what kind of assessments can a school district provide, and we're working with school districts now to try and get those questions answered, especially as we're rolling right back into distance learning. The federal government has said that districts can have wide flexibility in continuing to provide special education through distance learning and remote learning. And so while I know there are many questions and challenges, including how to keep staff safe and how to keep students safe, we still have an obligation to provide a free and appropriate education to our students. They deserve it. We know that this is challenging. I think for any district that makes the decision to say we're not going to provide anything, I do not believe that is right. The Department of Education does monitor special education. Much of this is spoken to in trailer bill language that the legislature has worked on. There's still some conversations taking place about what should be in trailer bill before this legislative session is over. But the bottom line is we have to let the needs of our children be our guide and what's in their IEP, and continue to provide the best services that we can, even under these conditions. And we're willing to work with any district that has a concern or is trying to work through a barrier. Obviously, we're happy to hear from families that are looking for additional help and how to work through barriers. We believe that partnership with districts can make this better, and we're happy to do our part, both through oversight, but also through partnership in trying to make it better. I think everyone's scrambling, Assembly Member, to try and make things better and working under difficult situations. But I agree, students should not have to be experience consequence as it relates to not receiving services that they need that might cause them to be set back in their experience, that might cause their condition and needs to be aggravated. I just think we have a responsibility to lean in. And again, I'm not looking to point fingers. I'm looking to find solutions. And when families have barriers, my expectation and my interest is how do we work through those barriers to help families get the services that they need.
Thank you so much, because that truly has been one of those issues that is probably the hardest one for any of us. The phone calls that we get from parents, from groups of parents, those are the ones that cause the greatest concern. And I appreciate your willingness to work with me, with our superintendents, with our parents, because you're right, our students deserve, and it's their right to get that proper education. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes.
Assembly Member, I'm wondering if—
Raise your hand, you don't have to raise your hand.
But we're in an educational kind of setting here, and so I felt like I have to role model what we ask students to do. And Assembly Member, if you're willing, I was wondering if any of the local district superintendents might say a word about how we can be helpful at CDE, what advice they give to parents who are trying to get, a little bit more support around special education services. I want to be helpful, and I don't want to be making stuff up from the lens of what happens in Sacramento. I want to be grounded in reality, and I don't always get an opportunity to be on with, for local superintendents and the county superintendent. And so I just like to hear from them in their, if it's okay with you, in their estimation, what else should we be doing together? Maybe there's some things that they're already doing that may help the people who are asking the questions tonight.
If it's okay with you, I'd like to ask Dr. Miranda from Colton, because I know this has been something that's very important to him, and he's been working, from my conversations with him, it's clear that he wants to find solutions. So Dr. Miranda, why don't you share with us some of the suggestions for our parents and for our students with regard to IEPs? And then also, if you would, and I would say the same thing for the other superintendents, to share the name of the person who would be the best contact. And I know because this is an issue that has come up in my office, I have met with a number of parents in my office, I've met with superintendents to try to help find solutions. Sometimes we succeed, but sometimes we don't. And the problem is that when we don't succeed, in the end, the one that suffers is that student. So Dr. Miranda, would you share a little of what Colton is doing? And also, Dr. Miranda, it's the Colton Joint Unified School District, which is Colton, Grand Terrace, and Bloomington. Take it away, Dr. Miranda.
I'll take it away. Thank you, Assembly Member Eloise Reyes and State Superintendent. Just great words of encouragement and support, and of course our County Superintendent. The first thing I thought about was equity, and one of our focus in Colton, and one of our LCAP goals actually, is a focus on equity. And for me, and for all Colton, our school board, all means all. That means all our students with disability, all our students deserve the support that they need, and that's what equity is about. And so, especially with our students with disability, during this time of this virtual learning, as a district, we've spent quite a bit of time identifying the needs and how to address them. I love that the state superintendent talks about solutions, and that's what our focus is. Especially during this virtual environment, nobody thought we'd start school again in this virtual environment, but we know that's the reality. That's not the ideal. Eventually, we'll fill that gap, and we'll get there. So we do, and just like every other district, my colleagues know this already, we have special education carriers, and our carriers created individualized distance learning plans for our students based on the students' IEPs, their goals, and every special ed parent was given those plans and sent those plans. And we have RSP teachers, special ed teachers with caseloads, and all of them make contact with the parents and the students. And so in those learning plans, which are critically and they're important, they outline all the special services that we have to perform. See, we don't stop just because we're in a virtual learning environment. In fact, we have to add more, I believe. So we got to stop thinking about the deficit model, more of a we have to add value to these plans. So we've been spending a lot of time looking at these IEP plans, and look, the teachers have been amazing, and they're the ones that are charged with the support of the RSP teacher. But our teachers in Colton who are providing the services to the students, and they do it through basically two methods: synchronous, live instruction, or asynchronous. So we know that those lessons that they're providing for students have to meet the needs of our special ed students. So are embedded in the daily schedules, and sure, like a lot of districts, our teachers have virtual office hours where parents can connect, and our teachers are connecting with our parents. And so parents are huge at this because they're collaborating and they're helping with the work in activities through the Google Classroom format that we use. So related to that, we obviously, students with disabilities we have support for speech, hearing services, counseling services, adaptive physical education, occupational therapy. Those have not stopped. Those are continued through, like the superintendent said, through the remote virtual learning. We haven't stopped those services. And so oversight is at the district level. We have we call curriculum program specialists who work with our pupil personnel service folks, our coordinators, our director, Rob Pearson. And so they work really diligently with our site principals who, in a sense, have oversight at the site level. So what I would do is encourage parents to get to the parent piece here, is to really, if all teachers that have reached out already to you as a parent, reach out to, if you have questions, reach out to the teacher, to the principal, and you can also reach out to me. And so any concerns that you have that have not been resolved, I welcome your concerns, your questions via email. So I do want to give a shout out, because we recognize there's so many questions, especially at the beginning of the school year still. Tomorrow night, our PPS, our Pupil Personnel Services, which is where our special ed department is, we're having a virtual parent night tomorrow at 3:30. So if you go to our website, www.cjsd.net, you will get the information. And so, and any parent's welcome. So even if you're not a parent in our district, if you want to just hear and get some information about what we're doing to service our students. So, those are some of the things that we're doing in Colton.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. State superintendent, or not state superintendent, our county superintendent, Ted Alejandre. Tell us about some of what you are doing at the county level to help with this issue. And there is another question very related about the moderate to severe special needs students. So tell us what the county is doing and how the county is helping the various districts to make sure that students with IEPs receive the best education.
Yeah, great question. I appreciate Dr. Miranda's comment, and also want to appreciate our state superintendent. CD really led the way in special ed services. If you go to our county website, on our very front homepage, there's a special ed tab that's really large. And if you go in there, it links you to the key resources we're promoting to teachers and parents across our county. And CD is right at the top. State superintendent had webinars with thousands of teachers and paraprofessionals on how to really engage in effective approaches to serve special needs students. So when you look at special ed, as you mentioned, Assemblymember Reyes, there's various levels of special education. When you go to the more extreme disabilities, we, for example, serve many students in the profound areas, the moderate, severe, but mostly severe, profound, and some of those higher level, vision impaired, hearing impaired, and all of those students have unique needs based on their IEP goals. And what's been wonderful to see is the teachers and paraprofessionals meeting regularly to brainstorm best practices and how to provide support to students in those programs. And we also have support from the SELPA leads. We have 3 main SELPAs in our county for the West End, East Valley, and the High Desert. And then large districts like Fontana and San Bernardino City have their own SELPAs. And so those SELPA administrators really provide tremendous and effective training regularly to teachers and paras to support special ed students. So that collaboration of resources is key. And as Dr. Miranda said, when parents want to have additional information or additional support, many times we call for a special IEP meeting to bring together the teacher, the parent, and the administrators to look over the IEP goals and objectives and determine if we need to make adjustments and move forward. So the teachers are the best first points of contact on questions or concerns regarding the IEP. And then there's district staff that are available to address additional questions, like the director of special education, the principal example. And then going back to partnerships, we were really intent on providing access to partnership resources. And I'll just give you 2 real briefly. One is our early literacy emphasis through Footsteps to Brilliance. It's the incredible early literacy platform, English and Spanish, that's available to any parent in our entire county for preschool students. Dr. Avila has extended it to all students in their district. And if parents engage on that every single day, that's a tremendous resource for early literacy and really gaining that ground that they need to be successful across the board. And then the other partnership is with our county government. We have a partnership with Department of Public Health and Department of Behavioral Health. And we recently had our Southern Region Wellness Conference for 1,400 people. All that content's available through the end of October, and it deals with many wellness issues and also some related issues that parents of special needs students would have a great resource in accessing. So I think, again, going through these partnerships and going through all the collaboration with teachers and paras and those experts that provide that support, that makes a tremendous difference in approaching special ed support.
Thank you so much. It really is, I think with parents that I meet, this is one of the areas that I think requires the most attention. I sincerely appreciate the comments there. State Superintendent Thurmond, here's another question from the community. Says, many of our parents have shared their concern for their child's emotional well-being. They are concerned that the child is missing out on social interaction with other students and with their teacher. What do you say to them, and what is the state doing to ensure that the social emotional health of our students are being met?
I thank the person for the question. It is true that pandemic has had a tremendous impact on students and adults. We've seen much higher rates of depression and other challenges, in many cases, even suicide. And so one of the things that we've done is we've created a counseling coalition that allows us to work with counseling groups across the state and counseling organizations. And California School Social Workers Association, Counseling Association, School Psychologists Association, the Masters in Family Therapists, all together are working with our group to help us build a triage way of just supporting students wherever they are. And we put on some virtual support circles for parents and for students, because parents just told us that, you know, being in distance learning before was just too hard and that it was stressful. We even brought on the state surgeon general, who was an expert in dealing with trauma. And she gave some doctorly advice, and really we often retell it, and it is do the best that you can. The most important thing is keep your child safe and address their social emotional needs. If you don't understand the schoolwork, get in touch with your teacher, get in touch with your school. You know, we put on these virtual support circles for parents. We're gonna do a few more. We even created a whole new support circle series for young people. We were concerned that they were seeing, you know, watching just awful traumatic experiences around race and police brutality. And so we created a circle series for them. And they actually started teaching us. And they said, look, we want to see representations that look like us in our history books. They said, why aren't we getting this? At a time when our nation needs healing, our students were the voice that said, give us more ethnic studies. Now we're working on an ethnic studies draft, and obviously there's a bill in the legislature that I know you supported, Assemblymember Reyes, to create an ethnic studies graduation requirement, but it gave us a chance to actually put on a 4-part series on ethnic studies so that we can build the self-esteem of our students, so they can see the contributions of their ancestors to make California this great state. And so we're gonna keep doing more of that. We're gonna build more virtual support series. As Superintendent Alejandro said better than I did, he's given my talking points. He's right. We did 60 different webinars on how to support educators and families. The #1 topic really was special education, followed closely by how we support our English learners. But we understand it's never enough, and we have to keep doing more. We can't rest on our laurels. We have to keep doing more for the duration of this pandemic to offer support. We will continue to do that. And we invite anyone to get in touch with our office if they want to make a referral or they need a referral to any of the counseling groups that work all across the state. You know, there's a group called there's a group that is called the Alliance that has organizations all throughout California that can serve families. We're building out this directory of services, and we welcome for any family to contact us if they want to do that through COVID-19 at cde.ca.gov. If they want to contact us through your office, we're happy to be contacted and to connect any family looking for support, social emotional learning, counseling. We're happy to connect them because we know this is so critical during this time.
And you know I'm going to call you. And what I love is that you always respond.
Glad to get your call.
I keep getting text messages. We're out of time. We clearly did not finish all of the questions from the community. I just love my community. I've got to tell you, I love my community because they're responsive and they know that if they join us on a town hall, they know that eventually they're going to get their answers. It may not be the answer that they want to hear, but they will get an answer. I wanted to ask for some closing comments. And if I may, why don't we begin with Superintendent Bassett from Fontana, Randal Bassett, Fontana Unified School District. Some closing remarks, please.
Thank you. I just appreciate Superintendent Thurmond, Assembly Member, as far as making this possible and everybody working together. We're all in this together, and the support that we've received has been amazing. It's been a challenge that no one would have thought that we were going to face if you think about this a year ago. But working together, we're going to get through this, and I just appreciate the support. And I know that our families appreciate the support, and we will continue to work and build those bridges for our students.
Thank you so much. From Rialto Unified School District, Superintendent Dr. Cuauhtemoc Avila.
Thank you very much. Remember that life is simple, and even in our current situation, what we need most now is patience, understanding, flexibility, and absolutely kindness. We must look out for each other. Our teachers, classified staff, and administrators in Rialto are committed and are caring people and will remain unified and continue to provide quality instruction and the resources students and families need to experience success during this time.
Thank you. My goodness, those are great words of wisdom. Thank you so much. Thank you. Kindness, I love that. From Colton Joint Unified School District, Superintendent Dr. Frank Miranda. Some final comments, please.
Absolutely. Just thank you for this opportunity to represent CJSD, Colton, and all the school district. You know, from a personal perspective, I got to just say, as a father, a husband to a first grade teacher, I'm living it every single day. My son's 13, he's an 8th grader, so you know those are teenage years, those tough years. But we're all in this together, like Randy said. And, you know, one of my favorite sayings right now is we don't want perfection. Don't shoot for perfection, perseverance. We got to persevere through this, and we can together. You know, I just wanted to share this to all the families out there. Be patient with your kids, your children. Love them. Be patient with yourselves. Talk to them every day. This is a great opportunity to connect with your children and take some walks with them and just learn. We can learn from this and grow from this. And I really appreciate this opportunity. We're here for you, all our parents in Colton Joint Unified. We're here to provide you the best education for your children. So thank you again for the opportunity to serve.
Thank you so much for being with us. Yes, you're right. Together, we're all going to get through this. I know we are. San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools, Ted Alejandre. Some closing comments, please.
And thank you, Assemblymember Reyes and State Superintendent Thurmond. Wonderful panel to be on. Just appreciate all the work of our paraeducators and teachers and the leadership of our superintendents. And Assemblymember Reyes, you're passionate about the youth and youth voice. And I just appreciate your efforts for our young people. In our county, we have a countywide student advisory group, about 400 students. We did live sessions of their recommendations before COVID. And the third group we had to do virtual because of COVID. We're looking forward to this year because when you really hear the recommendations from our youth, our high school students, and even our middle school students and below, it's just incredibly important for us to plan our agenda based on what they feel they need the most. And I know both you and our state superintendent are passionate about you. So thank you for all you do for our youth and our large district here in San Bernardino County.
Thank you so much for your leadership, and thank you for all that you do for our students. I love your annual event at the California Theater also. Your students shine there.
Thank you.
Well, my dear friend, the state of California's Superintendent of Public Education, Tony Thurmond, thank you so much for being with us. Can we have some final closing remarks from you, please?
The final remarks really are just thank you to you, Assemblymember Reyes, for putting together this very important and informative panel. So much wisdom coming from your superintendents and creativity. I'm really honored to work with them and to work with Superintendent Alejandra all the time, but to really hear the creativity that your local superintendents are bringing to this. I'm thankful to your constituents who brought forward these questions. We have to continue to address these questions. No matter how hard we work, if anyone is feeling disconnected, we have a responsibility to continue to lean in, to offer help. We can't just say, oh, well, we talked about that webinar last time. We've got to be in a position to say, how can we help you now, even though our resources are stretched? As all of your superintendents have said, this is daunting, but that we can do more together. By my estimation, this is the greatest challenge that any of us is going to experience in our lifetime. This is a pandemic. That means it is of worldwide proportion. So many lives have been lost and many more are impacted. We have to keep in that frame of mind. What can we do to prevent the loss of life, to keep our children safe, to keep our educators safe, keep their parents and family members safe, and ensure that our young people get an education, even under the most challenging of circumstances. But as all of you have said, we can rise to the occasion. We must. It's the human condition, and we can do more together for our 6 million students. I'm grateful to all of you. Continue to be safe and well. Thank you for your leadership and your friendship, Assembly Member, and I look forward to the next time when we can do some more good work together.
Thank you so much. I feel honored and I feel privileged that you would join us, and honored and privileged that I have in my district some of the best superintendents from the entire state of California. I know it. I absolutely know it. And I know that they feel the challenges of the students and they want to rise up and take care of our students. So thank you to all of you for being here with us, and to all of you who participated from the community, thank you so much. I hope this has been informative for you. I also want to take this time to remind everybody that our next town hall is going to be with our State Attorney General, Javier Becerra, and it will be on Tuesday, August 25th. So be sure to check our website for further information. Again, thank you to all of you for being here. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Talk to you later. Bye.